The rain fell hard on the broken streets of Carlos 9. It was not the kind of rain that cleaned anything. It was black, oily, and full of dirt. The people walking under their glowing umbrellas didn't look down. They never looked down, because in the alley below, covered in mud and trash, was a small girl crawling. Her name was Shiri. She had only one leg. The other one was gone. Blown away during a factory explosion 2 cycles ago. She used to dance. She used to be the pride of her school and her mother's joy. But now, no one even said her name. Now, she was just that crippled alien girl. Begging near the trash bins, her skin was pale purple, almost gray from hunger. Her long silver hair was wet and matted, stuck to her cheeks. She held out a shaking hand to a passing vendor. "Please, just one bite," she whispered. The vendor spat near her hand and walked away. Laughter followed, not kindness. "Hey, maybe you can crawl back to where you came from," someone shouted. "Maybe the worms want you," said another voice. Ziri pulled her cloak tighter and tried to crawl away. But even crawling was hard now. Her hands were bruised, fingers swollen, and stomach empty for 2 days. She stopped behind a trash pile and rested her head on a wet box. No one had helped her in weeks. The shelters were full. The doctors didn't want to waste energy on useless cases. She had once tried to sell her remaining belongings, but they were stolen before she could finish her first deal. Now she had nothing left except the broken crutch she used to drag herself around. The wind blew colder, her hands trembled harder, her eyes closed slowly. And in her mind, she heard music again, faint sounds of her feet tapping on the dance floor. She smiled a little through her cracked lips. Maybe this was the end. Maybe she'd fall asleep and never wake up again. That would be okay, she thought. It would finally stop hurting, but then a shadow moved. A quiet voice said, "Are you alive?" Shiri opened her eyes slowly, her vision blurry. She saw boots, not the expensive kind, but old and worn. Then she saw a hand, human, outstretched toward her. "Don't touch me," she whispered, too weak to scream. She had been grabbed before, treated like trash before, but the hand didn't force her. It waited, still and calm. The man kneeled beside her and placed something warm near her hands. It was a small container, full of soup, real food, real smell, hot steam. Shiri's eyes widened. "You're freezing," the man said, his voice soft. He removed his old jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Shiri didn't understand. No one had done this, not since her mother died. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Because you need help," the man replied, like it was the most normal thing in the world. The rain kept falling, but under that jacket, for the first time in forever, she felt warmth. The man picked her up gently, not minding the mud or smell. People nearby stared. Some laughed, others turned away quickly. A few even warned him, "Leave her, she's broken." But the man didn't stop. He just held her tighter and said, "Come with me." Shiri didn't know who he was. She didn't know where they were going. But something in her chest moved, a tiny flicker of hope she thought had died long ago. She looked up at him through teary eyes and saw no disgust in his face, just quiet strength, just kindness, just a stranger who had seen her when no one else did. As he carried her away from the trash, the mocking voices faded, the lights of the market grew dim, and for the first time in so long, Shiri whispered the words she thought she'd never say again. "Thank you." Shiri didn't know how long she had been asleep, but when she opened her eyes again, the rain was gone. Instead of cold metal or wet dirt, she felt something soft beneath her back. An old sleeping pad laid out on warm concrete. A dim light flickered above, casting golden shadows on the broken walls. The sound of a fire crackling nearby reached her ears. And for the first time in weeks, she wasn't shivering. She sat up slowly, surprised her body still listened to her. Her hands clutched the old jacket the man had wrapped around her. It was worn, patched in places, but smelled like soap and engine oil, strangely comforting. She looked around, blinking at her surroundings. It was a space beneath an abandoned bridge hidden from the main street, dry and quiet. There were a few supplies, blankets, tools, old cans, and a tin kettle heating over the fire. And there he was, the man from the alley, quietly fixing a dented canister, his back turned to her. Where am I?" she whispered. The man turned slowly and gave her a small nod. "You're safe," he said gently. "No one will bother you here." Ziri lowered her eyes, still holding the jacket tight. "You should have left me there," she mumbled. "I'm not worth this." The man didn't speak right away. Instead, he walked over and set a warm bowl of soup near her. "Eat," he said. "You need your strength." She stared at the bowl for a moment, as if it might vanish, then, slowly, she took it in both hands and sipped. It burned her cracked lips, but she didn't care. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she ate, but she kept going. Every drop was a gift, every bite a reason to stay awake. The man sat beside the fire, not too close, giving her space. She studied him now, really looked at him. He was human, dark hair, tired eyes, maybe in his 30s. He wore old work clothes with oil stains and a name tag that read, Leo. He wasn't rich, not tall or strong-looking, but there was something steady about him, something calm. "Why?" she asked again, setting the bowl down. "Why help me?" Leo stared into the fire, then replied softly, "When I was younger, my sister got sick, real bad. No one helped," he said, voice low. "They said she was weak, a burden. She died before I could get back to her." He glanced at Ziri, his voice almost a whisper. "I promised myself if I ever saw someone like her again, I wouldn't turn away." Ziri looked at the flames, her throat tight. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, but not cold. It was the kind that wrapped around pain without trying to fix it. "Do you have a name?" Leo asked after a while. She hesitated, then nodded. "Ziri?" she said softly. "My name is Ziri." Leo smiled gently. "Nice to meet you, Ziri." No one had said her name in months, maybe longer. Just hearing it made her feel like she existed again. She wiped her eyes quickly and whispered, "Thank you. For everything." The night grew deeper, stars hidden behind gray clouds. Leo handed her a roll of cloth. "Here, rest," he said. "We'll talk more tomorrow." But sleep didn't come easily. Ziri lay awake, watching the firelight dance on the walls. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw faces mocking her, boots kicking her, shadows stealing her food. But then she remembered the soup, the warmth and Leo's quiet voice. Slowly, her breathing calmed, and sleep found her once again. In the morning, she woke up to the smell of roasted grain and hot tea. Leo was already working, fixing an old radio on a crate. When he noticed her awake, he waved her over. "Want to help?" he asked, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Ziri blinked, unsure. "Help? Me?" He nodded, smiling. "Yeah, you've still got 2 hands, right?" She stared at him for a long time, then smiled. Small but real, for the first time in forever. Someone saw her not as broken, not as a burden, but as someone useful, someone worth saving, and maybe, just maybe, someone who could belong again. Ziri was standing again, even if only with help. Leo had found an old cart and turned it into a seat with wheels. He pushed her through back alleys and quiet places, teaching her how to balance and move again. Each day she grew stronger, not just in body, but in heart. She began smiling more, asking questions, trying to fix small things around Leo's shelter. For the first time in so long, Ziri was starting to feel like a person again. But peace never lasts in places like Carlos 9. Especially for someone like her, marked, mocked, and now moving again. It was only a matter of time before the eyes of the city turned toward her once more. It started with whispers in the street. "Is that the one-legged girl? She's still alive? She was crawling like a bug last week. Now she's riding around with a human?" People stared as they passed, some in disgust, some in surprise, a few with silent shame. Leo noticed the stares but said nothing. He just kept pushing the cart, guiding her to a safer path near the scrapyard where he worked part-time. Siri tried to hide her face under her hood, but the damage was already done. That evening, when they returned to the bridge shelter, Leo's face changed. He saw something on the wall, red paint smeared in angry letters. Purity first, no mixed filth. Siri gasped and looked away, her hands trembling. Leo didn't speak, didn't shout. He simply grabbed a cloth, dipped it in water, and began, scrubbing the words off. "You don't need to see this," he said gently. "This doesn't matter." But it did matter. And someone had seen them. Someone who wasn't just curious. Someone with power. The next morning, heavy boots marched down the alley. Leo was inside fixing a heater when Siri heard the sound. Cold and sharp, 3 enforcers in black armor stood at the entrance to their bridge hideout. Their helmets glowed red, and electric rods hung from their belts. "Human male," one barked. "Step forward." Leo walked out slowly, wiping grease from his hands. Siri stayed behind, peeking from the corner, heart pounding fast. "What's this about?" Leo asked, keeping his voice calm. "You've been seen aiding a Category 4 vagrant," the lead enforcer said. "She has no registration, no work permit, no medical clearance." "She's not dangerous," Leo said firmly. "She's injured and needs care." "That's not your decision," the enforcer snapped. "We are authorized to remove her for evaluation and disposal." Siri felt her breath stop. Disposal. That word echoed in her ears like thunder. She tried to move, to run, but her leg still wasn't strong enough and her heart beat like a drum in her chest. Leo stepped between them, arms wide. "You're not taking her," he said, louder now. "She's not trash. She's not some broken thing. She's a person." "She's a liability," one of them growled. "Step aside or we will arrest you for interference." "Do it then," Leo said, eyes burning. "But I won't move." The lead enforcer raised his rod and for a second, it looked like he might strike. But then he stopped, looking at Leo's face, the trembling girl behind him, and the people watching from the shadows nearby. Curious eyes, quiet mouths, hidden in doorways and windows. If they struck now, there would be questions, whispers, maybe even reports, and the enforcers didn't like attention. Not the wrong kind. "We'll return," the enforcer said coldly. "And next time, she better be gone." They turned and marched away, boots echoing in the alley. Siri let out the breath she didn't know she was holding. Leo dropped to one knee beside her, his face pale but calm. "I won't let them take you," he said, voice tight. "You're safe with me. Siri, I promise." She shook her head, eyes wet with fear. "They'll come back," she whispered. "They'll hurt you. Because of me." Leo gently took her hands in his. "I'm not afraid of them," he said. "I've seen worse, lived through worse. But if we give in now, then they win." Siri closed her eyes and nodded slowly. Something had changed, inside her, something that didn't want to run anymore. For once, someone was standing between her and the world, and that gave her the strength to believe. Just a little more, that maybe she wasn't alone anymore. Days passed slowly after the enforcers left. Every sound outside made Siri flinch. She kept looking over her shoulder, expecting armored boots to return and drag her away. But Leo stayed the same. Calm, steady, and kind. He went out every morning, returning with bits of metal, wire, and scraps from the junkyard. At first she thought he was building a heater, maybe fixing his tools. But then she noticed something strange. He kept looking at her leg, measuring its length with his eyes, drawing lines in his notebook. "What are you doing?" she asked one day, watching him twist 2 metal rods together. Leo looked up, smiling softly. "Fixing something," he said. "Something important." That afternoon, he showed her a surprise. From under a tarp, he pulled out an old mechanical leg, rusty, cracked, and missing a few joints. It looked like it hadn't worked in years. Siri stared at it in silence, unsure if it was a joke or a miracle. "It's broken," she whispered. "Yeah," Leo said, placing it on the table. But not dead. He began working on it every night after dinner. He'd take pieces from old droids, melted hinges, chipped servos, and slowly rebuilt the core. Sometimes it sparked, Sometimes it refused to respond, but Leo never gave up, not even when his fingers bled or his tools broke. And every time she offered to help, he said the same thing. "You're not a project, Siri. You're a person." Still, she stayed close, watching, learning. She asked questions, handed him tools, and cleaned the workspace. And slowly something strange began to grow. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. One evening, the fire crackled behind them as Leo placed the almost finished leg on the table. He turned to Shiri, his eyes bright. "Want to try?" he asked gently. Her heart thumped hard in her chest. She hadn't stood on two legs in over a year. What if she fell again? What if it broke? But then she saw the look in his eyes. Not pressure, just belief. I'll try," she whispered. Leo helped her sit on a crate, then carefully removed the wrap from her damaged limb. What was left of her leg had scarred, badly, the skin pale and thin. He placed the prosthetic against it and secured the straps one by one. Then, with a soft hum, the joints clicked into place. Siri gasped as the metal responded to her weight. It didn't hurt. Not like before. It felt strong. Leo offered his arm. "Lean on me," he said, voice steady. Siri took a deep breath and stood. Her balance shook for a second, but she didn't fall. Her other leg trembled, but the prosthetic held firm. She took one step, then another, each movement clunky, awkward, but real. She was standing, walking, with help, yes, but walking. Tears ran down her cheeks as she looked up at Leo. "I'm standing," she whispered. "I'm really standing." Leo's grin stretched wide. "Told you," he said. "You're not broken." That night, Siri danced, not like before, not full spins or leaps, but she shuffled around the fire, laughing, arms wide. Leo clapped along, laughing with her. They didn't care about the noise, the danger, the city outside. In that moment, there was only light, music, and freedom. Later, as they sat beside the fire, Siri touched the metal leg gently. "It's not perfect," she said, smiling through tears. "It's perfect for you." Leo replied. She looked at him, her voice softer than the wind. "No one's ever done something like this for me." Leo leaned back, staring at the stars. "Well," he said with a smile, "no one ever danced in my junkyard either." They both laughed, but beneath the laughter, something deeper was growing. Not just trust, not just friendship, but something warmer, something waiting to bloom. Outside, the wind carried the sounds of the city, noise, machines, distant footsteps. But in that little space beneath the bridge, surrounded by junk and light, Siri took her first real steps toward becoming whole again. And Leo, the human no one ever noticed, became the reason she believed in life again. Siri was walking more each day. Her steps were still shaky, her balance not perfect, but the prosthetic leg Leo had rebuilt for her held strong. Each step gave her more than movement. It gave her pride. She was no longer crawling through trash. Now she stood upright, eye to eye with those who once looked down on her. They began walking through the markets again. This time together. Leo pushed a small cart full of scrap parts, and Siri walked beside him, holding onto the edge. People still stared, but differently now. Some with shock, others with quiet wonder, and a few with disgust that hadn't faded. But she didn't care anymore. Not with Leo beside her, not with her feet back on solid ground. One afternoon, as they searched a junk booth for replacement wires, a voice called out behind them, "Well, look at this." Siri froze at the sound. It was smooth, mocking, and cold. She turned slowly to see a tall, alien male, dressed in fine cloth, sharp eyes, and a wide grin. It was Driven, a known trader in the city, a collector of rare attractions. And Siri had met him once before. She remembered how he offered her a crust of bread, then tried to lock her in a cage. She escaped that night, but not without bruises and a scar on her wrist. "I see the little crawlers walking now," Driven said, circling her like she was meat at a stall. And with a human, no less. How romantic. Leo stepped forward, eyes hard. She's not for sale, he said plainly, voice low. Draven laughed, looking him up and down. Oh, I'm not here to buy a person, he lied, then added with a smirk. I'm here to offer you opportunity, friend. Leo didn't speak, so Draven continued. I'm hosting a showcase in 2 nights, he said, tossing a small, glowing chip toward Leo. Rare survivors, strange stories, unique beings. Your friend here, he gestured toward Siri, is all 3. Siri clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, but her voice was stuck in her chest. Draven looked at her with greedy eyes. She can walk again, what a tale, he said. And imagine what people would pay to watch her dance, broken as she is. Leo didn't catch the chip. He let it fall into the dirt. Leave, he said, his voice quiet, dangerous. Draven's smile faded just slightly. Think about it, he whispered, then turned and vanished into the crowd. That night, Siri didn't speak. She sat near the fire, staring at her prosthetic leg. Her hands trembled. Her mind raced with old nightmares. Leo sat beside her but didn't push her to talk. Finally, she whispered, He wants to sell me again. He won't, Leo said. Not while I breathe. But Siri shook her head. You don't understand, she said. People like him, they always get what they want. Leo looked into her eyes. Not this time, he said. We'll show them something they can't buy. And just like that, a plan began to form. If Draven wanted a show, then they would give one. But not the one he expected. Siri would walk onto that stage, not as property, not as a victim, but as a fighter. As a symbol that couldn't be owned, they spent the next day preparing. Siri practiced walking, turning, even short steps that resembled dance. Leo repaired a small speaker, dug out music from the old world. He also wired up a recorder, a secret device tucked into Siri's clothes. They'd record everything. Draven's words, his threats, his trade offers, proof that he was selling lives like objects. When the night came, the sky over Carlos 9 glowed red with neon haze. The showcase was held in a warehouse hidden behind a casino. Inside were cages, glass tanks, and spotlights, just like a circus, but colder, darker. Wealthy aliens sipped colored drinks and placed silent bids on beings behind bars. Siri felt sick, but she stood tall, Leo's voice in her mind like armor. Then came her turn. Draven introduced her with flair. Once broken, now walking, witness the miracle of survival. She stepped into the light, face calm, eyes burning with quiet fire. Music played, soft, haunting. And Siri began to move, not a full dance, but graceful enough to make the room silent. Gasps echoed, and Draven smiled, thinking he had won. But when Siri stopped, she pulled the recorder from her shirt and held it high. The audio played. His earlier words, his offer to buy her story, his threats to Leo. The room fell silent, then exploded in shouts. Some guests backed away, others pulled out their comm devices, and security rushed in. Draven turned pale, his smile gone. Before he could run, 2 officials grabbed him. Someone had already sent the recording to the City Justice Board. Leo stepped onto the stage and stood beside Siri, holding her hand. She didn't tremble this time. She stood strong, free, proud, and unafraid. The video spread like fire across Carlos 9. Within hours, the news channels were flooded with clips from the auction. Slave trader caught live. Broken girl outsmarts billionaire. And most powerful of all, she danced, and the world stopped to watch. For the first time in her life, Siri was not just a shadow crawling through the alleys. She was a name people whispered with awe. Some cried while watching the footage. Others turned off their screens in shame. But no one could deny what they saw. A one-legged girl, once mocked and thrown away, had stood before the elite and exposed their ugliness. Through dance, through truth, through courage. Leo sat beside her as the fire crackled, holding a cup of tea. He looked at her quietly, letting her breathe. I didn't mean for all of this to happen, she said softly. I just wanted to prove I'm not nothing. Leo smiled. "You didn't just prove it, Siri," he said. "You showed them who you are." The city reacted faster than anyone expected. Draven was arrested, and more investigations followed. Other traitors were named. Victims were rescued. The underground market began to collapse under the weight of public anger, but change came slowly, and not everyone was happy. Some called Siri a liar. Others said it was staged. Yet despite the noise, her image, standing tall with her prosthetic leg, her hand in Leo's, became a symbol across colonies. People painted murals, wrote songs, and even held events to support other disabled beings forgotten by the system. One day, Siri was invited to perform at the Civic Hall of Carlos 9. It was the biggest space in the sector, filled with leaders, students, artists, and survivors. She was nervous, more than she had ever been. She looked at Leo backstage, her voice shaking. "What if I fall this time?" Leo placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then fall with pride," he said. "They came to see you, not perfection." The curtain opened and a spotlight fell on her face. Siri took a breath and stepped into the center. This time, no one laughed, no one whispered. They watched, breath held as the girl once left in the mud raised her arms and began to move. Her dance wasn't fast or flashy. It was slow, like a story being told without words. Every step spoke of pain. Every turn echoed loss. But more than that, it carried strength, love, and something rare. Rebirth. She didn't wear fancy clothes or cover her prosthetic. She wore simple fabric, her hair tied back and her scars in plain view. She wasn't hiding anymore. She didn't need to. When the music ended, there was silence. Not the awkward kind, but the stunned kind. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole hall erupted into standing applause, louder than thunder. Some were crying, some were cheering, some just stood frozen in awe. Siri looked out into the crowd, heart pounding. But her eyes searched for only one person, Leo. He stood in the back, arms crossed, smiling through tears. She didn't need trophies, money, or fame. She had already won the moment he whispered, "Come with me," in that alley. After the performance, people lined up to speak with her. Young aliens with missing limbs, old war veterans, even children holding posters with her face. "You made me believe I'm not broken," one girl whispered. "You gave my daughter hope again," a mother said. Siri nodded to each of them, listening, smiling, hugging where needed. But when the crowd left and the lights dimmed, she sat alone on the edge of the stage. Leo joined her, handing her water and sitting quietly. "I'm tired," she said with a small laugh. "You've earned it," he replied. "You carried the whole galaxy on your shoulders tonight." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know what's funny?" She whispered. "All I wanted was someone to look at me like I mattered." Leo wrapped his arm around her gently. "You matter more than you know," he said, "not just to them, to me." She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. No words were needed. The quiet between them was full, peaceful, complete. That night, under the stars of Carlos 9, the girl who was once mocked, chained, and left to crawl, slept with peace in her heart, because now the whole world had seen her, not as broken, but as brave. And the man who believed in her when no one else did sat by her side, just as he had from the beginning. Weeks passed since Siri's dance at the Civic Hall, but the moment still echoed through every corner of Carlos 9. Posters of her performance hung in schools, clinics, and refugee shelters. Her name was spoken in meetings about new laws, better, rights and protections for the broken and forgotten. Even though she never asked for fame, it came anyway. Uninvited but impossible to escape. And yet, for all the voices outside cheering her name, Siri still felt most like herself when she was with Leo, back under that same bridge near the same fire, sharing simple food and quiet peace. There was no crowd, no lights, no applause, just warmth and truth and safety. Leo had turned his shelter into something new. With help from people who believed in what Siri had done, they built a small workshop. There, They fixed broken devices, and sometimes broken people, old droids, damaged hover chairs, cracked prosthetics, all brought, in all restored with care, and sometimes young aliens with missing limbs came too. Siri welcomed each one, showing them how to walk, how to balance, how to live again. One night after a long day of repairs, Siri stood outside their little workshop, looking at the stars. She wore a simple shawl, and the wind played gently with her silver hair. Her prosthetic leg clicked softly as she shifted her weight, but she didn't mind. She was stronger now, inside and out. Leo stepped beside her, holding 2 cups of warm spiced broth. He handed her one and stood silently, staring at the same sky. "You're quiet tonight," he said, voice soft. "Was just thinking," Siri replied, "how strange it all is. A few weeks ago I was crawling in trash," she said with a faint smile. "Now I get letters from governors." Leo chuckled. "The galaxy works in strange ways." Siri turned. To him, her eyes serious. "Do you ever regret helping me?" she asked quietly. "I brought trouble, danger, everything." Leo looked at her for a long time, then shook his head. "No," he said, "not even for a second. If I had to do it again, I'd still stop in that alley." She looked down at her cup, then back at him. "You gave me my life back," she whispered, "and I never got to say it properly." "Thank you, Leo." He smiled, then placed his cup down and reached into his jacket. "I was saving this for the right time," he said, pulling out a small chain with a glowing crystal. It was simple but beautiful. The crystal shimmered faintly, blue and gold, just like her eyes. Siri blinked, surprised. "What is this?" "It's not much," Leo said, "but I thought maybe you'd want it." He stepped closer and gently placed it around her neck. His hands brushed her collarbone and her heart beat faster. "I know you've been passed around, pushed aside, treated like you don't belong anywhere," he said, voice low. "But you belong here with me." Siri swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "No one's ever said that to me." "Well," he whispered, looking into her eyes, "let me be the first. You belong with me now." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest. "And I want to stay," she said, "not because I need to, but because I choose to." They stood together in silence, the stars above, the wind soft, the night peaceful. No speeches, no cameras, just 2 souls who found each other in the middle of a cruel, broken world, and chose to stay. Later, as they sat by the fire, she leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know," she said sleepily, "if I ever dance again on a stage, I want you to be watching from the front row." Leo laughed softly. "I'll be the loudest one cheering." "No," she whispered, smiling. "You'll be the one I'm dancing for." The flames crackled gently, and the city around them faded into silence. Siri had once been a broken girl, crawling through mud. Now she was a woman with purpose, with strength, and with love. And in a world that once mocked her, feared her, and tried to destroy her, she had found the one place where she was safe. Not in walls or shelters, not in applause or fame, but in the heart of the human who had whispered the words that changed everything.